To the Higher Education Budget Committee meeting today on the state of higher education in Kansas. Just welcome everybody in the audience, all members and those listening online. A couple things before we start. Trevor, could you tell us who's online?
Elaine Frisbee and Matt Keith.
Thank you. I did not note this at our meeting the other day, but in your binder, your committee folder, there is the list of committee rules and also the conferee rules. So just take a look at that. If you have any questions, please let me know. Also, is there any requests for bill introduction? If not, we will get started with our presentations today. I'm glad to welcome, starting off today's meeting and discussion, is Interim President of Washburn University, Marshall Meek. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
I've been at the foundation at Washburn University for the past 8 years. Prior to that, I was at St. Francis Foundation here in Topeka, and before that, worked for Cerner. I've been serving as interim president for the last 4 months at the university, and it was a huge honor to be asked to step in and do that for the interim period. I've been working with alumni of Washburn for 8 years, and I've heard their stories and what a difference the university has made to them. And that's why it's so meaningful to me. I believe so wholeheartedly in the mission. I will begin with the obvious big news story out of Washburn this week, and that was yesterday. Dr. Julianne Mazicek was announced as the 15th president of Washburn University. And I'm definitely biased when it comes to Dr. Mazicek, but I think it was an excellent selection by the Washburn Board of Regents. She came up as faculty at Washburn in the business school, became dean of the business school at Washburn, came over to the Washburn Foundation and was our president for 15 years, then became the vice president of academic affairs, and left us last year to go be the president at Midwestern State, which is a Division II school in Texas, part of the Texas Tech system. So she is coming back after a very short absence, and she's an Ichabod through and through, and I'm looking forward to working with her really starting here in a couple weeks. She starts on February 1st, so she will see you soon. I actually met with her for a couple hours this morning, and she said to give warm regards to the committee, and she looks forward to meeting you in the very near future. Yesterday's announcement of Dr. Mazicek was historic at Washburn, not just because Julie became the first female president of our university, but it's also the first time in 25 years that Washburn has announced a brand new president. As you're probably aware, Dr. Farley retired last fall after 25 years of serving Washburn. And he had a lot of high profile accomplishments in his 25 years, but two of them really stand out to me. One of them is the affiliation with Washburn Tech. Washburn affiliated with KA Area Technical School in 2008, and this came with the support of the legislature. They came under the Washburn umbrella and became fully a part of Washburn. The affiliation has been great for Washburn. It's been great for the Topeka community and for our students. It really allows us to offer educational opportunities across the whole education continuum. So you can get a certificate at Washburn Tech. You can go on and get associate's or bachelor's degree at Washburn University. We've made easy pathways. We actually have several stories of students who started out at Washburn Tech seeking a certificate and kept going and ended up graduating from our law school eventually several years later. So those examples are those educational pathways working. It's a model that's being emulated by other universities in the state now, and that's something we're proud of, and it's been really great for Washburn. I would have to say, though, the single greatest accomplishment during the last 25 years was just the transformation of our campus from a commuter college to a full residential university with student engagement, dorms on campus, and all the infrastructure to provide a traditional college experience. So that's been an amazing change for Washburn over the last 25 years under Dr. Farley's leadership, and we're very appreciative of that. He's continuing to serve in his role as President Emeritus and working on fundraising and international student recruitment. Having said that, we're very excited about the future with Dr. Mazachek too, as she starts here in a couple weeks. Just to share a little bit about the 2022-2023 budget for Washburn, I want to begin by thanking all of you for your support. We saw an increased investment in Washburn and Washburn Tech this year, and that will make a significant difference for us. It was really a two-pronged increase, support for our operating budget, as well as support for some capital projects. And so if you don't remember anything else about me coming to share with you today, I want you to know that Washburn is very grateful for the support that we get from the state of Kansas. I'm sure you're aware we have a unique funding model. We receive a smaller percentage of state aid compared to other institutions because a portion of our operating revenue comes from local appropriations like the Shawnee County sales tax. So the municipal operating grant, which is our state appropriation for operations, consists only or provides only about 11.5% of our operating budget. For other KBOR schools, you would expect that percentage to be higher, make up a higher percent of their budget, and that's because they don't receive the local appropriations that we do here in Shawnee County. So it maybe makes up a smaller percent of our operating budget, but it's very critical for us. So again, we're very grateful for the support from this committee and from the state. Aside from the presidential search, the primary area of focus during my 4 months as interim president has been on enrollment. Enrollment, as you're aware, has been a challenge across the state. At Washburn, we saw a decrease of about 3.5% in our class this fall. However, incoming direct from high school, these numbers were up about 4.8%. So we did see kind of a bright spot in recruiting new students direct out of high school to Washburn. We've made some changes during the last few months, things that we're excited about, projects we're working on. One of them was financial aid optimization. This was a project where we took a look at how we award all scholarships and tried to reconfigure it in a way that would be more attractive to students. We rolled out a brand new scholarship grid in October as a result of this work. It was very well received. We saw an uptick in applications after that announcement, and now we just have to convert those applications to enrolled students. We also rolled out a zero textbook cost initiative in October that was very well received. And we're continuing to try and strengthen our presence and our relationship with Shawnee County schools. We think we have an opportunity in Shawnee County to continue to develop those relationships. This is an area where the forecast is for graduating seniors from high school to actually hold steady or increase a little bit over the next couple of years. So we think we're in a good spot to continue to make some progress in enrollment here in Shawnee County. We received some really great news from U.S. News and World Report last fall that should help us as we seek to get Washburn's message out. The rankings came out and we were ranked the #1 public regional in the state of Kansas. And we were ranked #5 in the entire Midwest region for our students graduating with the least amount of debt. Those two things combined kind of confirm something that we already know at Washburn, which is you can come to Washburn, you get a great education, and it's affordable. We have competitive tuition. We don't have fees except for a $55 fee that the students have levied upon themselves as an activity fee, and we have significant scholarship opportunities for students. Our foundation has the 37th largest endowment dollars per full-time equivalent student among all public universities in the country. So there are great opportunities to get through Washburn and to get out with limited debt or even debt-free in some cases. We also received some recognition from the Chronicle of Higher Education for graduation rates. They did a study of how COVID impacted graduation rates in 2020 and 2021. And we were recognized with a small group of universities across the country who actually increased graduation rates during those years more than 5% above the national average increase in rates. So that was something we were really proud of. Our success in graduation rates, I think, is due in large part to our Center for Student Success and Retention. This is a team that has a number of initiatives designed to help our students persist to graduation. And this work is becoming even more critical as demographics change. This fall, 48% of our incoming class at Washburn were first-generation college students. So we know that we need to have the wraparound services and the teaching focus that they need in order to persist to graduation. And I think we're doing a pretty good job of that. We're proud of the work we do at Washburn. There's a lot more work to be done. I'm really excited for Dr. Mazichak to come in and hit the ground running after spending 30 years with the university already. She knows exactly what she wants to do to get things started. And that's my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, President Meek. I did build in, as it relates to the format of today's meeting, I've built in time. See, you were under time. I mean, you're setting a pretty good precedent today, President Meek.
Under, right?
So now we'll have time for questions. Does anybody have any questions? Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me, I'm wondering about your one-year law program for college graduates, the one that coming back to Washburn, is that correct? I'm trying to figure out, you can get not maybe a paralegal degree. I don't even know what the program is. Are you familiar with that at all?
Not as much, but you mentioned law programs that are kind of unique. We have one called Third Year Anywhere, where law students for their third year can go anywhere in the country and take their third year classes at Washburn online. And that allows them to get set up with internship opportunities and even a future employer. But we can provide information on a whole host of different programs in the law school, and I can kind of zero in on the one that you're specifically interested in.
Thank you. I'm specifically talking about the one that is for college graduates already. Someone like maybe a representative in the Kansas legislature who could do something for a year and get some added information and kind of living in Topeka for a while. So
sure.
Anyway, thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll circle back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions from the committee? I did have one, President Meek. Have you identified anything that's motivated those first generation college students to, I guess, arrive on your campus?
I think we do a really good job of recruiting and sharing with them through our Center for Student Success and Retention what the opportunities are. It's really a top to bottom effort, from the application process to admissions to enrollment to the wraparound services that we're providing them, especially in their first year. They all take a Washburn 101 class, their first year, that kind of teaches students how to do college. I think we're starting to develop a reputation regionally and even have gotten some national recognition for our work around what we're able to do with first generation students, getting them started and then helping them persist to graduation. So I don't think it's any one thing. I just think we're starting to get a reputation of being pretty good at helping those students be successful.
Thank you. Representative Wassinger.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I have lots of questions, but I'll try to keep it to these two. What is the percentage of remedial classes that you have to provide for your incoming students in order to get them prepared for the rest of their Washburn education?
Oh, percentage, I probably couldn't just give you, after a short time as an interim, a percent of remedial. But again, I could follow up with more information on that.
Okay, well, I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? If not, President Meek, we appreciate your presence here today, and please send our regards to the incoming president. And I guess you have a few more weeks left, so I wish you the very best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next on the agenda for the presentation is Jim, President and CEO of Manhattan Area Technical College, President Jim Jeanette. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Got it. Thank you. Hope we get an A. It'll be on our transcript for you.
And you are here today representing the
colleges.
tech colleges, yes.
I've been selected by the presidents of the tech colleges to represent them again this year. I'm back. I think it's because I'm close. Thank you for this opportunity. I did provide a document to you. I want to run through a few key highlights. I think if there was an objective review of the state of the tech colleges in Kansas, the grade comes out as an A, and I want to give you some background for that. Right before COVID, the 7 of us worked with a group, it's now called Lightcast, it had been called EMSI, to what was our economic impact for each of our institutions. And that was late 2019, and our economic impact for the state was just under $400 million. That's pretty unique because that year our total state funding for the 7 tech colleges was less than $30 million. So huge economic impact. None of the tech colleges were granted local taxing authority when we were converted from VOTEX about 2004. So unlike community colleges or school districts, none of us get local mills, property taxes like that. 2 of our members do get some help from counties that they're home to, but it's an annual appropriation. So let's talk about why I'd give ourselves a grade of an A and why I need you to invest in us, because we provide the most rapid direct return on the investment of state dollars there is. Over 95% of our students come from Kansas. At my institution, it's 98%. More than 80% of our graduates stay in Kansas. At my institution, it's 86%. We're the group that provides the mechanics that fix your cars, the people who fix your air conditioners or furnaces. We're the ones who have the nurses in your clinics. And then all of us have a specialty area, which I'll talk about in a moment. 4 of the 7 tech colleges were ranked in the top 20 in the nation for top 2-year college graduation rates. North Central Tech at number 9, Flint Hills number 10, Salina Tech number 15, Northwest Kansas number 20. That's, again, a direct indication of how good we perform. My institution was ranked the 4th best in the nation, 4th best 2-year college in the nation this past year by Wallet Hub, a national financial services company that does an annual review of 2-year colleges. The tech colleges have been the only sector of public higher education in the state to have had enrollment growth over the last 5 years. We've grown by about 25% in headcount and just over 4% in FTE. Our funding is not as good as we'd like it to be. And so if you flip over to page 2, let me talk with you a little bit about what we'd like and why it would matter. We would like consideration of what we call a base operating grant. We don't want taxing authority. One of our advantages in not having taxing authority is how fast we can move. Our boards are appointed by our boards, people on our boards. We're widely connected to the economic development in our communities and our counties. We move quickly. For instance, you've heard about Scorpion coming into Manhattan soon, the biomanufacturing company. We were a key part of that, working with the Manhattan Chamber, the Pot County Economic Development Group, and Kansas State University. We started construction on a new building on our campus to help with Scorpion plus related trades. We'll have that building done in 12 months. We started the process 4 months ago. For higher education, that's warp speed factor 10. So we're very good at taking good use of the money, the stewardship, and getting performance from it. A base operating grant of $3 million per institution would allow us to jump and give you a return of probably $80 to $100 million a year on that investment. We're looking at how do we build the future related to the KBOR strategic plan in providing solid workforce education, skilled technicians. The tech college's mission is to provide high-wage, high-demand training and/or critical need training that requires less than a bachelor's degree. In my particular segment of the state, there are 5,000 annual openings that fit that definition according to the state labor data. 5,000 per year. So I've got to turn out as many workers as I can. We also can factor into the framework for growth, especially related to manufacturing. Wichita Tech, for instance, aerospace and manufacturing is their key mark, and that really relates to the state economy with aerospace. The $21 million total, that's the total we're asking for the 7 tech colleges, is much less than taxing authority. It would allow us to ramp up more students into healthcare, into IT, into construction and industrial engineering, manufacturing, and now biotech and bioscience. If you come to our campuses, you're going to find a wide mix of ages, a wide mix of students, of people. You're going to find some very passionate staff and faculty. None of us can pay as great as we'd like to. Our turnover is fairly small because our people have so much fun seeing the results of what they do. Every one of our institutions could tell you story after story of how we've changed people's lives. What I'm really glad to talk about is we've seen increased collaboration with some of our two-year college colleagues in the community colleges and especially with the universities. You've seen the partnership with Wichita State, Wichita Tech, with Washburn, Washburn Tech. Like I said, with Kansas State, it's not just Scorpion. We've worked on other things related to basically negative energy impact housing. Every year we work with the K-State construction techs, architect crew, and helping build houses through Habitat for Humanity that have a negative impact on the energy grid. So the cool thing with the tech college is that we provide skills-based economic development. We attract local people, we keep them. When I became president of Manhattan Tech 8 years ago, we had 12 Manhattan high school students taking early college classes with us. The fall of 2022, that number was over 430. The students have this figured out. And I'm pleased to say many of the universities are now saying, what can we do to help work with you to draw your students to us? The young people have figured out I can go to a tech college, get 6 months to up to 2 years of training, get a good job, have no student debt, become a good employer, a consumer, and a taxpayer. What's next? So again, I thank you for this opportunity, but I'd encourage you, what you invest with us comes back fast. That 21 million, if we were able to get it in the next fiscal year, you would see that return of 80 to 100 million within 24 months. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, President Jeanette. Committee questions, Representative Rajas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you again.
See you.
All right. So of that 3 million, just a blanket 3 million for each institution, is that, I assume you don't want any strings.
As few as possible. In talking with our colleagues, and I pointed out, probably half for capital outlay projects, half for operating costs. For the operating costs, it's so we can stand up new programs that were requested, a lot of times because of the way the workforce changes, but we don't have any type of funding that allows us to start something up. For instance, I've had requests for diesel mechanics, more IT, surge tech, other things. I don't have the wherewithal to do it.
Chairman.
Yes.
So, and help me, didn't we pass something like, I'm sorry, sure, I'm looking at Representative Fairchild. Didn't we pass a deal that because we added to it for money specifically for tech schools?
There was maintenance of effort funding 2 years ago, and then last year there was one-time increase in capital outlay, but it's not included in this year's budget.
I understand. You did receive that, and
right.
What did you do with that?
I bought welding machines.
Because I know we've had discussions before about, part of the challenge with your institution is that you need another building. And so, but of this 3 million, this 3 million is basically for operations. Is that what you're telling us?
Operations and capital outlay. Again, it would give us the ability to maintain buildings, get high-end equipment that qualifies for capital outlay, and start working with our donors that we do have so that we could put up buildings as needed. I've just started putting up our first new building in forever, an advanced technology center that will triple capacity for construction trades, double it for HVAC, a new program in plumbing technology, new program in biomanufacturing for Scorpion, expand industrial engineering, and expand our ability to create more linemen for the electric companies.
Okay.
That cost me $16.3 million.
Yeah. money's coming from?
I have 1.8 in a matching grant from last session from the legislature. I have, so far, every donation or grant I have has been at least 6 figures. That gets me to about a quarter of the funding, and the rest I'm financing right now.
I have some more, Mr. Chairman, or I can wait and see if others.
You may proceed.
Okay, thank you. So we're looking at a permanent addition of a base operating grant of 3 million every year. Is that?
That's ideally, but I would also say, after talking to our members, let's say there'd be a way to say, well, let's do it for 5 years, and what are the benchmarks you want? What are the deliverables you want back in terms of jobs created? People staying in our area, that economic impact. We're open to that as well, so that it sets benchmarks of deliverables, so you see the value of the investment.
Wichita Tech's involved in this as well?
Yes.
I know they're part of it, but there's still that confusion. Okay, last question, Mr. Chairman, thank you. As you've seen this explosion of high school students taking things like college algebra and other things, in your area, I mean, you have Highland, you have some other community colleges that offer that as well. Are those type classes primarily for high school students, or are those also primarily those that are attending your institution?
It's all of the above. The gen ed classes from the tech colleges are part of the K-Board transfer matrix that the legislature had a key part in shaping several years ago. So we get a mix of high school students knowing they're going to go to K-State or KU that will start their gen ed with us to transfer because we're less expensive, smaller class sizes. It's part of our general student population in terms of certificate or degree requirements. We will get some students coming in that come back home to Manhattan for the summer, pick up some gen ed with us. So it's a very broad array of people that will take those gen ed classes.
So you're getting funding back from the state for that?
Under the non-tiered funding.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I think of a few more, which I probably will, but thank you.
No, that's great. Any other questions? Representative Amix.
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Jeanette, good to see you again.
You.
Question, the increased enrollment that you have, every person that applies for your school to get into one of the programs can get in, correct?
It varies from year to year and program to program. Sometimes we don't have enough capacity in that program to take everybody who has an interest. In our particular case, we've been tracking it. Applications for our programs run about 135% more than my program capacity. So I'm often turning people away. When we have to do that, we try to refer them to a nearby community college or tech college. But many of the tech colleges are in the same boat I'm in. We don't have the capacity.
Thank you. I did have a follow-up question to the Representative Amix. Is there a number that you could give the committee, across all 7 tech colleges? If how many more spots would you need to take everybody that's coming to you today, approximately?
Based off the data I've discussed with my colleagues, we probably have the capacity to grow between 25% and 50% more enrollment if we had the resources.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, President Jeanette, we appreciate your time before the committee today. Look forward to working with you as the session unfolds.
Stop by and see us.
Thank you. Next on the list, I want to introduce Matt Lindsay, President of the Kansas Independent College Association and Foundation. Mr. Lindsay, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Chairman Howe. I am Matt Lindsay, the president of the Kansas Independent College Association. Thank you for the invitation to come before you again, and good to see a lot of familiar faces. In addition to my remarks today, you all should have gotten one of these. I think the committee assistant made sure you had one. I'll refer to some of the things in here, but this has got a lot of data that if you have questions as we go along, I recommend you get familiar with it. KICA represents the 21 accredited not-for-profit undergraduate degree institutions in the state. So that includes the state's oldest college, Baker University in Baldwin City, founded in 1858, before the state was even a state. The second oldest college, which is Benedictine College in Atchison, Kansas. It includes the state's youngest college, Mid-American Nazarene in Olathe. It includes the state's first college to admit women and African Americans, Friends University in Wichita. There's a lot of history among those 21 institutions. The majority, and that 20 out of 21, have a faith tradition, Christian faith tradition in their founding. The 21st is Cleveland University Chiropractic School in Kansas City, one of the country's foremost colleges in chiropractic medicine. Let me give you a quick note on vocabulary. You're going to hear me, the I in KICA stands for independent, but you will sometimes hear me say not-for-profit or nonprofit. You'll sometimes even hear me say private. But I do not speak for the for-profit or proprietary private colleges. So the Universities of Phoenix and Rasmussen College up the street, schools like that, they are not part of what I'm talking about. I'm talking about solely the not-for-profit colleges based in Kansas, and there are 21 of them. That distinction, I think, has some relevance because it speaks to it characterizes the relationship our schools have with the state, with the government, as independent not-for-profit institutions. By statute and by precedent, our schools are outside the governance and coordination and regulatory authority in most respects of the Board of Regents. So we operate independently. So that gives you a sense of sort of where we fit. Now we try very hard to work in coordination and cooperation and try to make sure we're all rowing in the same direction because serving Kansans is still the mission here. Quick a note on my the schools in KICA in terms of enrollment. Our enrollment this fall is about 24,000 students. That's slightly down from last year, and I mean ever so slightly in whole. But that masks a little bit of an interesting distinction here. And that is about 12% of all the college students in the state of Kansas go to a private college in Kansas. Enrollment on our main campus, the bread and butter, the physical campus of each of our schools, is up 5% compared to last year. And it's up nearly 18% over the last 5 years. So that physical main campus in Kansas for private colleges is growing and growing quickly. That's where our primary efforts have always been. That's our bread and butter. Given our mission and the type of schools we're talking about, face-to-face education, that traditional college experience remains the priority, and it remains incredibly valued. And I think that 18% increase over the last 5 years, despite COVID, really says that investment is paying off in what we do. Why then are we slightly down in aggregate? And that's because a number of our schools have physical satellite campuses somewhere else in the state. Friends has a campus in Overland Park. Southwestern had a campus in Wichita. The adult and continuing ed market, which is what those tended to serve, has gone away. So those schools saw a 66% decline in enrollment this last year. We suspect intuitively, and I think this should fit with what you've heard both earlier this morning and in the news, as the job market has stayed hot, it is difficult to convince folks to say, hey, why don't you pay the tuition and come back and go back to college? Moreover, a lot of those adults who might have been pursuing those programs learned during COVID that online was a more conducive way for them to do what they're doing. So many of our schools are seeing and even having to close some of that physical secondary campus, satellite campus work they were doing. And that reduces that total enrollment that we had, even though the main campus, the bread and butter, is still increasing leaps and bounds. That enrollment's also really high among out-of-state students. Our schools are really good at encouraging and recruiting students from somewhere else to come to Kansas. While that increase slowed slightly this year compared to where we were the last couple of years, we still added 3.5% almost in out-of-state enrollment compared to last year. All told, our student population is approaching a 50-50 split between in-state and out-of-state students. We are really excited about how many we bring from other places. And in fact, we have some emerging evidence, and I don't want to get ahead of myself, but a lot of them stay in Kansas when they graduate. So we're pretty good at a brain gain effort for Kansas in bringing people from somewhere else, and they decide to stay here after they graduate. You'd be hard pressed to go to places like Sterling and Heston and Lindsborg and not meet a bunch of folks who came here to go to college at one of those colleges and then said, hey, this is a great place. Kansas is awesome. I'm going to stay here. They found a home. They found a first job. They found a spouse. They found a church and said, I'm not leaving. And that's a pretty common story in a lot of those communities. Despite that ongoing increase in out-of-state students, KICA's share of high school graduates is increasing slightly. Of those who are pursuing college from our Kansas high schools, it's gone up a little bit. If you look at page 3 in your book, you'll see a blue horizontal bar chart that speaks to this a little bit. While that data is slightly out of date because the feds have only tracked it through 2020, we suspect this trend has kind of continued. You'll note that really it's a slight increase for us and for Jim's schools of Kansans graduating Kansas high school and staying here for college. Unfortunately, that data, the other part of that data is how many of our Kansas high school students are seeking to leave the state to go to college. Even if we're barely holding steady at the private colleges, everybody else is seeing mostly declines. They're still going to college. Some of them are going to workforce, but a lot of them are leaving the state. And I don't know what we can do yet, but we need to do something to try to encourage more of our Kansan high school students to pursue higher ed of any type, certificates, associates, bachelor's degrees at the schools we have here, the great colleges. Also, I'd like to note that KICA schools, as it turns out, are just as diverse, if not more so, than the public universities in the state. Over the past decade, my institutions have seen a 13 percentage point increase in their percentage of non-white students. In fact, one KICA member, Donnelly College in KCK, for the last 4 years has been named the most diverse college in the Midwest by U.S. News and World Report. It is a point of pride for us that we serve non-white and first-gen students and serve them well. In terms of outcomes, last year we awarded about 19% of the bachelor's degrees and 20% of the master's degrees in Kansas. That's about 5,700, almost 5,800 total degrees and credentials. And at the core, that's what college is for students to earn that credential that helps them lead a successful life in all the facets. In some fields, we're more heavily enrolled and we sort of punch above our weight than others. I don't think this is surprising to anyone. You can see on page 9 of your book, for instance, we awarded 37% of all the bachelor's degrees in nursing. Private colleges are extremely important in your conversations about healthcare because a lot of Kansas nurses are coming out of our schools. Same thing for mental health. 33% of all the law enforcement and emergency management degrees being awarded in the state come from KICA schools. We're very heavily invested in that kind of service work. 53% of all the clinical counseling degrees. We punch above our weight in business and biological sciences. And of course, 17% of the new teachers every year come out of KICA institutions. This is who we are, service-minded. Our graduates are looking to serve Kansas and serve the world. I would say people, our institutions are a good investment, particularly for low-income students. As I noted before, and I will note again, 40% almost of our students qualify for the Pell Grant, the federal grant that is given for students who have economic need. So it's 39%. That's higher than any other sector in the state in terms of the percentage of our students that qualify for the Pell Grant, more than the community colleges, more than technical colleges, more than the Regents universities. We admit as a percentage more Pell students than anyone else. And they graduate. We are among the best in making sure that those students with low income status coming in finish on time. And you can see that in the book. This is a point of immense pride for us, and it connects to something we announced this fall. This last September, we managed, myself and the Community College Association managed to wrangle almost into all of our presidents. So we have combined 39 presidents, and I think we have 35 of them in the room, to sign an agreement that says if you graduate from a Kansas community college, any of the 19, if you get an associate's or a degree from one of those, and you transfer to a KICA institution, you start as a junior. Your gen eds are waived. You start immediately as a junior, except for you might have to take a religion class because it's a Catholic school or a Methodist school. Moreover, all of your credits transfer into that program. They are not just elective credits that transfer. They transfer and map into your degree. This is because we know that transfer students, if we don't do these kinds of efforts, lose too many credits. Too often they drop out. Too often they don't finish on time. It increases cost. It increases debt. And we knew collectively that this was an effort worth making, and we're proud that we did. And it was the right thing to do. And surprisingly, it was very easy. The hardest part was the logistics of wrangling 39 presidents rather than trying to get this approved by the institutions. There's a pervasive myth in terms of cost that private colleges are too expensive. It's not true in Kansas. The average sticker price, so what we have to quote before aid for KICA institutions this year is $29,113 for the entire year. It's the 15th year in a row that KICA colleges have been at least 20% below the national average for college costs. We are every year below what you hear in the national news. And that's just sticker price. 98% of our undergraduates get a lot of qualify for a lot of financial aid. We raised and awarded $192 million in private aid last year alone. We give out a lot of scholarships that we raise privately. It's still not cheap. College is not cheap. But the net cost for us is just under $20,000 a year. That's competitive, and we're pretty happy with where that is. Moreover, cost per year isn't the only thing that should matter. If you graduate in 4 years versus 5 or 6, you're not just paying a 1 or 2 years less in tuition. You're out in the workforce earning money. So the cost equation balances out in a hurry if you can graduate in 4 years, and that is our focus. We get a lot of our students, if you finish in 4 years. Lastly, the debt is about $24,000 per student on average. That may sound like a lot, but the base model for a MSRP for a 2023 Chevy Malibu right now in Wichita is $25,495. One of those two things, so it's about the same. One of those two things depreciates the moment you drive it off the lot. You're going to be lucky to get your money back, and the other one pays you back over the course of your life. Moreover, I have not heard a single story about the out of control automobile debt in this country. That's not to say that we shouldn't be attending to student debt. Student debt, we need to make it affordable. But it is not, at least in Kansas, and I think you would hear from Dr. Flanders the same story. Kansas is still a low student debt state, and that's something we should be proud of. Lastly, I'll do a quick note, and some of you have already seen, we did an economic impact study, similar to what you heard from Dr. Jeanette. We found out this year that, and Parker Phillips conducted this study for us, that every year the Kansas independent colleges create $1.1 billion in economic benefit to the state. That's compared to the slightly less than $9 million the state pays to students who attend private colleges. So the return on investment to the state for what we do is enormous. We're really proud of this. One of the things I found out as I talked to Senator Moran about this when we released it, and he told me, well, that's interesting. The amount of the value of the export of the beef and veal in this state is $1 billion. So maybe Kansas is not just a ranching state, but is a private college state. And he was pretty happy about that turn of phrase. For our priorities for this year, just a couple of notes, and there'll be opportunity for me to dig into them, is one, on financial aid. When we talk about student financial aid, you heard in the governor's budget an increase for financial aid. Financial aid should go to all students, private or public. This is about keeping Kansans in Kansas. And so we should seek to make sure that every one of our financial aid programs equitably treats the students who choose to go to Baker and Benedictine and Tabor and down the line. Please, that's going to be one of the things you will hear from me throughout the session, is to attend to that. A second is when we talk about workforce. We should be part of that conversation. My private colleges should be part of what we're doing. So whether it's on engineering, and you're going to hear me as making a request on the engineering initiative, that we should include Benedictine College's 4 ABET accredited engineering programs if we want to have more engineers in the state. When we talk about mental health programs, when we talk about nursing, when we talk about internships, KICA schools should be part of that conversation because we are part of the workforce and we can help drive Kansas forward. So those will be the 2 main priorities which you're going to hear from me, is include us in your workforce work and remember to treat our students equitably in student financial aid. With that, I'm happy to wrap up and answer questions.
Thank you, President Lindsay. Any questions from the committee? Going once, going twice. Any questions?
Put them to sleep.
Is everybody awake? Okay, just making sure. Well, we can always come back to questions as members think of anything. It looks like we're ahead of schedule, so if you'd like to stick around, there may be questions later.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, next we'll have Heather Morgan presenting on behalf of the Kansas Association of Community College Trustees, and Heather serves as the executive director. Welcome to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure to be here today. My job is to present on the 19 Kansas community colleges. I represent their presidents and their boards of trustees. We are different than tech colleges and private colleges because our schools are locally governed. We have locally elected boards of trustees who hire the president who runs our colleges. Collectively, we serve more undergraduate students than the state universities combined. About 95,000 undergraduate students that we're serving in one way or another. One of the things that's come to light over the interim in the workforce committee that Representative Tarwater chaired was one of the things about community colleges is our enrollment has gone down, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One is Representative Rogers mentioned it earlier about the technical colleges have started offering general education classes, and so there's fewer of those. But we've also gotten better at making sure our students don't lose credits and transfer. That's why we signed the universal transfer agreement with the independent colleges, because what sometimes is happening is our students will want to transfer, for example, in engineering, and the Regents University will only take 34 of those credits into the program area, or 45 of those credits. It actually varies depending on what your major is in engineering, how many of those credits will transfer into the program. So as we've worked with our students, while we pursue program-to-program articulation with our state and universities, we've been trying to make sure that our students don't lose credits in transfer. And I know some of you on the committee have had stories of your children transferring and having to retake classes. That's not efficient for students, and it's certainly not efficient for Kansas taxpayers. So that's one of the areas that we've really been trying to focus on. But the other area is what we call business and industry training. When you see the enrollment counts from the Kansas Board of Regents, all of the students that we teach through business and industry training, not one of those students is in the enrollment report. For example, Johnson County Community College has about 20,000 students. They have another 16,000 students who aren't in the enrollment report that they've been provided business and industry training. We get 0 state funding through the Kansas Board of Regents to provide that training. There's a tiny bit through the Department of Commerce, depending on the individual incentive agreement. But by and large, we are doing direct from community college to the business deals about training their employees. In fact, occasionally the employer, example would be Imperial Beef or Tyson in Garden City, will actually lend us one of their employees to come and teach that class to get that worker up to the skill level that they need. So if you think about it as individualized, customized training. Kansas community colleges are providing 80% of the technical education in the state. So while we have 7 tech colleges, the vast majority of the technical education is being done in the community colleges. The economic impact of just one Kansas Community College, Kansas City, Kansas Community College, is $138 million. If you add up the economic impact, we would be well over $1 billion. The taxpayer return on investment in Pratt County, for example, is a 3-to-1 return on investment. Our local boards take their taxing authority very seriously. Over the past decade, generally the taxing authority has stayed pretty darn flat. Some of them have gone down by as much as 16 mills. Our community colleges might levy 6 mills, 7 mills, 8 mills in Johnson County. It may be at 200 mills somewhere else. We are not equalized in any way for the amount of taxing authority that happens. From a student perspective, our students are 80% part-time. They are generally older than other higher education sectors. They are very much working and learning. We've gotten strongly into the registered apprenticeship game so that our students are a full-time employee at a local business coming to us for their very specific classes that they need to get that certificate. So they're working and learning at the same time. The decrease in adult education and adult learners that Matt Lindsay talked about is really a product of the workforce. If you were in appropriations this morning, you heard we have 2.5 job openings for one employee. That's a problem. We've got to figure out how do we import more people into the state. We stand ready to train them, but we got to have more people to fill the business and industry needs. Our college presidents tell me all the time, we talk to a company who wants to come to our community and expand, but they're afraid there's not going to be the workforce there. So as we think about things like Panasonic, things like Scorpion that Jim mentioned in Manhattan, that workforce is absolutely critical, and the 2-year sector colleges are training for about 80% of those new jobs. Additionally, we've been working really hard and faced some challenges with the pandemic related to remedial education. Our students who are coming to us are far more in need of some remediation, and so we are trying to transition to what we call a co-requisite format, which means that rather than taking a developmental education class for 3 hours and passing, or in most cases not passing, the remedial education class and having to take another 3-hour class, We could offer a 5-hour, for example, college algebra class, where the 3 hours is the normal class, 2 hours of tutoring to help get our students up to speed. We are seeing some really significant deficits in the K-12 students that are coming to us that need to be remediated, not only in math, but in English. And we have no admission standards. We take whoever comes to us and we get them up to speed and trained going forward. In addition to, oh, no problem. In addition to the work that we're trying to do with all students who come to us with whatever deficits that they come with, we're really trying to promote the Promise Act. The first time that there was ever a 2-year sector scholarship in this state was 2 years ago when you all passed the Kansas Promise Act. The nice thing about the Kansas Promise Act is you're not just putting money into financial aid. There's a 2-year live and working requirement in Kansas. I call it the stickiness factor. We're investing in Kansans, and we're going to get them to live and work in Kansas for 2 years. We're excited about it. We found our students have really enjoyed it. What it allows students to do is to graduate from a Kansas community or technical college or a 2-year independent college with no debt. It pays for everything. And then they can immediately go to work from the workforce. About 80% of our students are from Kansas, and about 80% continue to remain in Kansas post-graduation. We've got all sorts of statistics and things like that. I'm going to spare you that today and maybe talk to you about that when we talk about the very complex funding model of the 2-year sector. Just the one thing I will say is when the community college, while the community colleges do have taxing authority, the way that the 2-year sector cost model works factors that in. And for students from our taxing district, we only get 1/3 funding versus 2/3 funding for all the other students. So that local property tax is figured in. There may be some of your colleagues who live in a community college community where you may hear that they feel like they're paying taxes and maybe they shouldn't be for students who are coming from outside of their county. That is something that we hear and something that we have to keep in mind when we think about what is the state's investment into higher education and making sure it's fair for not only the taxpayers in the other 105 counties that don't have a community college, but those 18 counties as well. The things that we are looking forward to, one of our big challenges, just as Jim said, was capacity. 2 years ago, prior to the pandemic, our nursing programs were all full with waiting lists. One of the things we are now seeing is the quality of students who have applied have gone significantly down, and programs that have had a waiting list historically forever don't have a waiting list. So we've got to figure out how do we get more people going into healthcare and getting these trainings to meet our healthcare needs. That goes towards, there's a couple of barriers. One is capacity. We need buildings, we need equipment. We thank you, Representative Rogers and Representative Fairchild, for the $3.8 million increase in this committee last year. We use the 9 of our 19 colleges get the capital outlay. And that money was used for things like knocking down the wall to create a larger nursing simulation lab, buying nursing simulators. Unfortunately, when you all give the state employees a pay plan and when you fund the CPI for K-12 education and some of that goes to the pay plan, the community and technical colleges don't receive any of that money. So we're funding the increases for our salaries and trying to compete with business and industry, because remember, most of our faculty are people who are coming directly out of business and industry out of our funds. That is a competitive disadvantage, and it makes it very difficult to recruit a nursing faculty member when they could be making 2 to 3 times more working in the hospital and working a whole lot less hours. So figuring out a way that we can hire the faculty that we need. We have had programs not operate the semester because we can't find the faculty we need and pay them specifically in computer science and things like welding, industrial maintenance, mechanics, things like that. So in addition to the healthcare pieces and the in-demand occupations, just really thinking about how do we leverage our community colleges, which are all across the state, in a community that we serve the people who are place-bound. We serve the people who are working and learning. We serve the single moms. That is who we are. That is part of our core mission. How do we help more of those Kansans get involved in education? How do we stop students from leaving the state of Kansas when we've got good options here? We're a third cheaper than any other option in the state of Kansas. So I tell people affordability from a community college, you can take advantage of the Kansas Promise Act. There is absolutely no reason that you can't get higher education in this state if you want it. We've got to be sure that we're selling the value of higher education and really meeting the business and industry needs to make sure we are training for the jobs and the skills that business and industry need. Because if we aren't, they're going to continue to go towards business and industry training, and they're looking more towards skills and less towards certifications. And that just impacts our funding model and making sure that we can continue to be funded to meet the needs of Kansas business and industry, both the ones that are here and the ones that we're trying to recruit. This session, I'm not going to go too far into our budget request, but last session there was a lot of discussion about recentering. We hope that we have the interim committee that this committee recommended, and that will mean that essentially for those new to the committee, some people were getting a little more than they were supposed to, some people were getting a little less. Last year, for the first time in this state's history, we were fully funded. Now the people who are getting more than they should are going to get a 50% cut. And we hope that you'll put that proviso in the bill to implement what the House Appropriations Committee was sort of after last year. The interim committee agrees with that. We agree with that. And that we can get onto a path that we are fairly funded across the state. And then we need to look at making sure that the amount of money that we're paid per course matches. We are different than the universities. We don't get a block grant. Community and technical colleges are paid on the students we teach based on the courses we teach. So if enrollment goes down, we get paid less. It doesn't work that way with other block grant systems. And so we'll talk, I'm sure, a lot more about that in our budget hearing, but we hope to get on with recentering, get that behind us and move forward and see what we can do to work with you to serve the Kansas business community. And with that, I'm happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Heather. Committee questions? Representative Wassinger?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I heard you say something about your enrollment is down because tech schools are doing basic education levels. So
if you go back to when tech schools did not always offer the general education courses. So if you go back to when tech schools just did the tech school, and now they do general education courses, some of those students previous to that would have come to us. That's not a problem. It's just a fact. That now if a person's at a tech school, they're getting those general education requirements and the tech credits at the same time.
No, if I may, Mr. Chairman, one of the problems I have when we start saying, this is why we're not doing as well, and this is what they have done, I think it bothers me because I think we've begun to, sure, caring more about the systems than we do the student. And you're not alone, but I think competition within schools is always good.
We would agree with you. And if that's how it came across, I didn't mean it to come across that way. I'm just saying that a fact of the matter is we only have so many Kansans who need to take a general education class. And so we have less taking with them with us. And that is one of the reasons, if you look back historically 10 years ago, why community colleges have gone down, because we have students, to your point, the student should take the class wherever it is most convenient for them and makes the most sense for them. And if they're at a tech college, it makes a whole lot more sense to take that class at the tech college. And that wasn't the way the system was structured before.
Original. So we're not doing it the same way.
Yep. It's just a change.
It's
just a change.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Rogers, do you have a question?
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry about that. Heather, see you. A couple things. So you brought up the ROI of KCK. When you make your presentation, could you give us an ROI? Could you have a ROI of all the community colleges?
We don't have one for every one of them, but we do have them for a number of them. Actually, this next year, we're going to do what Matt did with all of the independent colleges, and we're going to do a system-wide one where we can say what is the ROI of every college. But a number of our colleges already do that: Pratt, Cali, Butler, Barton, a number.
Whatever you have, because I think from a area, I think a Barton and their outreach might be a little different, say, than a Seward, that maybe one that is located like close to a metro area, or Kansas metro area, if you will. So I'd be curious about that. It's something I've talked about before, and as we talk about the funding model and so on, and service areas, we've had this conversation, I think even before, and I don't mean to keep bringing it up, but I don't know if we've fully vetted and if the service area model, in a sense, is still working. And if from a funding standpoint, I mean, I, you know, the community I live in, we're in between two, but with mobile, with online, with everything else, is the way we're doing all this in service. Is it? Do I don't? I'm careful to use the word antiquated, but we're trying to move forward but still kind of holding on to some of these anchors, if you will.
Let me explain that for the benefit of the rest of the committee who may not be as familiar with service areas. So every university, every community, and every technical college has a service area. Some of those service areas overlap. So an example of the two-year sector, there are a number of community colleges who share a territory with a tech college, a service area. The way it works is in your service area, you have the right of first offering of a program on campus. And the on-campus part is really important. There are no service areas for online. Anybody can offer anything. Anybody can take anything on there anywhere. We believe the service areas are a good model to prevent unnecessary duplication and to prevent, for example, having a ton of folks trying to compete against each other for the same program within a very limited geographic space. So the way we've used service areas, for example, Fort Scott Community College offers a water technology program across the state because other people have not wanted to offer it. Hutchinson Community College lets Flint Hills Tech come into their service area to offer culinary because it doesn't make sense for Hutch to offer it and they don't want to. And so we think service areas, while occasionally some people like to complain about them, we think that they keep things a little bit more orderly and prevent unnecessary duplication and unnecessary investment of taxpayer dollars in something that may not be as efficient as possible. If the college's whose service area covers somewhere and a program is needed and they're not willing to deliver it, then they give permission for someone who's outside the service area to come in and deliver it. And so we think that it's a pretty effective way to prevent duplication and to keep things in order and still have the flexibility to offer new things, because if the community college or the technical college doesn't want to offer that program, it allows the opportunity for someone else to come in. And again, that's only for on-campus programming.
Chairman, right. Thank you. Right. I think as we go through our discussion of recentering and getting all these things that we've tried to tackle and we're getting closer, is to really have a serious conversation of looking and moving forward. As we're all trying, and I get it, we're all trying to get that student, whether they're on campus or online. But I just want to make sure, because we have a number, and Vice Chair Armberger said she's going to try to get to every institution. She's going to be on the road a lot because we have a lot in the state our size. So that's I just want to have that conversation, and if we choose whatever, and again, I don't have an answer, but I think as we talk about, and many of us have talked about, the taxpayer and how we're doing that. Of course, think about the student, yes, but the bottom line is the taxpayer is the one that's footing the bill, whether it be locally or all of us. So I just want to make sure that as we have our discussion with the community college, Mr. Chairman, that we do talk about that. And if it's, if it is working, that's fine. But to have a good, I guess I'm just a little concerned with the expansion of some of those basics. It's one thing to say offer fire prevention or offer water technology, but if you're 300 miles away offering Algebra 1 and Comp 1, that is probably a conversation that needs to happen so we as appropriators fully understand that.
I do not disagree with you.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any more questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda, Dr. Blake Flanders, President and CEO of the Kansas Board of Regents. Dr. Flanders, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chair Howe and members of the committee. As we get started, we have some PowerPoint slides that we've put together. I'll just quickly roll through those and then we can spend the time answering questions. Number one, I wanted to say thank you for last year. Thank you for your investment in higher education and your support of our state and public universities, our community colleges, and our technical colleges. Board of Regents, we have a 9-member board, just as background, appointed by the governor, confirmed by the Kansas Senate, 4-year terms. We govern the 6 state universities. We coordinate the community and technical colleges. We also administer the state financial aid programs, the adult education programs. There's a number of Kansans that do not have a high school diploma, so we administer those programs that were formerly known as the GED. And career and technical education, we're also in charge of the state university retirement plan. And then we regulate, as Mr. Lindsay said, not the independent colleges, but those for-profit colleges. Many of you know about Phoenix University or those types of universities. We regulate those as they come into the state. So what does coordination mean? We argue about that all the time. We determine the institutional roles. Really, one reason for SB 345 and bringing everyone under umbrella is all the budget requests come through the Board of Regents. So you don't deal with budget requests from every institution, every sector. They come through the Board of Regents. And also the non-budgetary items, we'll vet those before they come over here legislatively. So that is a value add. We also collect and aggregate all the data. We have a tremendous database with a tremendous amount of information. And if you have requests, please let us know and we can generally get those numbers for you. In terms of governance, we hire and evaluate the CEOs of each state university. Each of those universities are actually a state agency. And so they have a line item next to their name, and we develop policy for those universities. And then Washburn is unique. I used to say they're the only municipal university. There's actually 3. And you've heard about Washburn, and they're governed by a separate board and coordinated similar to the community colleges and technical colleges. Community colleges, you've heard they've got an elected board. Tech colleges have an appointed board. Community colleges are elected board because they have taxing authority. About $283 million in local tax goes through those independent or those county levies, and you've heard about that. I want to talk a little bit about our strategic plan. In 2018, we started developing that plan. We went to had focus groups across the state: Dodge City, Garden City, Colby. We even had people from Goodland, my hometown, going to Colby for that stop. So that was great. We went to Hayes, Pittsburgh, Wichita, Kansas City, Topeka. I hope I'm not forgetting any communities, but we went all over the state and asked people, really, what do you want out of higher education? And so this plan's a bit unique for the system. It's unique as I look at other plans across other states, and that they're about their individual colleges. I think to Representative Wassinger's point, is it about the system or is it about what you're actually doing for Kansas? And we came out, we heard 3 things. We had those focus groups of parents and students, and then we also had businesses in each of those communities. We heard, number 1, we want you to help Kansas families, not just the student, but the entire family with affordability, access, and success. Business was always concerned, has been concerned, more concerned today about the talent pipeline and innovation. And then how can you help drive economic prosperity? Now, not just about the money, but also about some other outcomes. You know, Lumina reports that people that have an associate degree have 60% report their health as very good or excellent. You know, high school diploma, it's at 50%. Baccalaureate degree, it's at 70%. So additional education beyond high school, those individuals have better health outcomes. They have lower incarceration rates, and they also have increased volunteer hours. So we can really help improve communities by delivering on the promise of higher education. And then, as we know, the research universities, and that could be actually an independent session for this committee as well. The research universities, companies are attracted to research universities, and they're attracted to that innovation. And we're asking universities and colleges to help drive that recruitment and drive that attraction of companies to our state. So in terms of helping Kansas families, that's pillar 1 of our plan. We've, for the last 4 or 5 years, tuition's been relatively flat. And part of that is we're trying to be more attractive to Kansans and to every student as we recruit. We have passed a common general education framework for the system because we want to reduce time to degree. And I would agree with Mr. Lindsay that price is not necessarily the only driving factor. If you take longer to get your degree, it's going to get more expensive for you. And then we thank you for the increased need-based aid. We think that's very important in terms of a strategy moving forward. We produce almost 43,000 credentials per year at all different levels. We have certificates, we have associate degrees, and all the way up through PhD programs at our universities and our community colleges and technical colleges. Our pillar 2 in our plan is supporting Kansas business. And I hear every day about how businesses need more talent. How do we recruit more? It used to be I would always hear about the skills. We need this skill. We need a different skill. We need more soft skills. I still hear that some, but not near as much as please give me someone. I think there is a level and a sense of real need out there from our business partners in terms of the talent pipeline. And the National Federation of Independent Business, I put that on a slide. They report that as well, and you hear it in your local communities when you go home. We have had programs that have had partnership with the legislature, and those have had great success. And I might just highlight a couple, 2 or 3 of those. We've had the University Engineering Initiative, the Kansas Nursing Initiative, and I want to talk a little bit about our Excel and Career Tech Initiative because it's unique to this state and it's been a great success. With University Engineering, we started out, we were graduating about 875 engineers a year. And the state came to the 3 universities that have engineering programs and said, we want that amped up, and we want it amped up considerably. And over 10 years, we're going to invest $100 million, $10 million a year, and you're going to match it. So we had double the investment. I always appreciate when you say, you put some skin in the game, we're going to put some skin in the game, and we're going to see where we can get in terms of targets. Today, we have almost 1,500 graduates, engineers. We were up to almost 1,700. We've dipped back just a little bit. Perhaps that shows some contraction in the system, but we're going to amp this up and we're going to make sure we stay way above our goal. This has been helpful in recruiting companies and also giving students a great job as they exit our universities. The Nursing Initiative in about 2006, you came to us and said, we need to increase the capacity of registered nurses. We want to increase by 250 slots. Just give us more slots. We used competition in the system. We made it more of a competitive grant. And not only did we get 250 more slots, we actually got 250 more graduates, which is a lot more difficult than just opening slots. And I'm glad we did. It's 250 more a year. We're still incredibly short coming out of the pandemic, incredibly short in terms of nurses. But I wonder where we'd be if we wouldn't have had that initiative. And then the Career and Technical Education Initiative is one that I'm really proud of. As that started, we used to serve in high schools, junior and seniors in high school, we'd get a chance. And in the old days, it was the VOTEC, right? Well, now those have converted to technical colleges, or they went to a community college and took some technical programming their junior or senior year. We always serve between 3,000 and 3,500 students. That's just about where we were as Kansans. And it really didn't vary too much. Now we're over 13,000. So if I go to that local business that has HVAC and I ask them, so now do you have plenty of HVAC techs? They always tell me no. Okay, so I know there's still a shortage. There's still a shortage in the trades, but where would we be without this program? So this Senate Bill 155 is what we call it in our slang. This program's been highly successful. And then Pillar 3, advancing economic prosperity. Now, what we ask our universities to do is say, what's your target in terms of how you're going to recruit business and attract business in terms of jobs and in terms of capital investment? Now, what we didn't do is we didn't do an impact study, okay? And you've heard about impact studies. Those are very different. They'd be much larger. But collectively, they said, we think we can attract about 10,500 jobs and have $6 billion in capital investment. And that's been the goal over the next 10 years to say, where are we going with that? So here's what we would count. We would count jobs that what we call are direct jobs. Direct jobs are wealth creation jobs, so it's not similar. That means that they sell at least 51% of their product out of state. And so those dollars come back into Kansas. So you wouldn't count a job like at McDonald's, because that's more of that serves the local area. It doesn't mean they're not an important job, but these are driving jobs such as the Panasonic. So we would count, so Kansas State could count, helping to lure scorpion. And we know it's an entire ecosystem, because Manhattan Area Technical College is going to deliver much of the training for scorpion as well. But, the project's not as high profile as Panasonic, obviously because of the numbers of jobs, but it was 500 jobs at almost twice the average Kansas wage. Tremendous economic development in terms of what's happening in Kansas and how universities and our colleges can be part of that recruitment. So what's our value proposition? Well, what we know is as you increase your post-secondary education, your incomes go up. And you can see that chart, you have it there. And it doesn't mean for everyone. So the next chart, I always get this. They say, well, I have an uncle, didn't graduate from high school. He's a millionaire, and I always say, well, there's one, but this offers your best chance. So if you just graduate, so if you look at that red line across and look at a baccalaureate degree, median lifetime earnings, you make about $1 million more than you do with someone with a high school diploma. But 7.3% of those with less than a high school diploma actually do as well as somebody with a baccalaureate degree. So there's a few. It's just a degree, a certificate, an associate degree, baccalaureate degree is your best chance of getting to the middle class. So as you can see, as you go through, people with some college, about a fourth of those do as well, but 3/4 do not. And so I thought that was a useful graph that Georgetown University put together. It's national data, but I think it really makes sense. Typically, our graduates, many of them stay and work in Kansas. With our community colleges, our technical colleges, or our universities and community colleges, it's a little over half. With the technical colleges, it's about 10% higher. If you look at a class that graduated in 2012, and then as it goes farther out, we do see some erosion. So we need to focus on retaining people in Kansas. But generally, after about year 6 or 7, it kind of starts to firm up. You kind of make a life somewhere, and you stay in the system. Now, I want to talk a little bit about our enrollments. So our enrollments are, as you know, are down. Everybody's been reporting that. FTE students declined about 13.7%. Student head count down about 15% for the last 10 years. These are only the credit students. So we don't count the business and industry training. We used to collect that data. We do not anymore. We don't count, for K-State, we don't count the extension. So if they touch somebody through extension, we're not counting that. These are just the credit students who are seeking degrees. And what we know is our rate of decline is not uniform across the system. With our state universities, we had about a 4.4% student decline, but at Washburn, it was about 22% over 10 years. So they got hit harder. And if you look at our two-year colleges, the community colleges lost the most at 28.8%. The tech colleges, they had a student headcount increase. So what's going on here? So I always was concerned. I'm still concerned. I think price is a factor. I think cost is a factor for Kansas families, but it's not the only factor, because as the community colleges pointed out, they have the least expensive tuition. So we need to look at, are there other barriers where students are not going to college? So if you look at our college going rate for our system, and this is for the publics, but generally the clearinghouse data shows it being pretty close. We also have the in-state privates in there. you can see that every year we drop about 1 percentage point. Not 1%, but 1 percentage point. So each year we have fewer percentage of our graduating class from the high school that attend college. Okay. And so that's an issue for us. That's a headwind. We also look at the ACT scores. So if we just put those up, this has happened over time. We used to have about 72% of the students ready in English. Now it's 53% by ACT. This doesn't mean, I'm not telling you this, is just by ACT scores. And if you look at math, we had usually about half of the students that graduated, these are graduates, half the students that graduated were ready for a college math class. Now it's about 32%, okay? And then to meet all four, used to be about a third of the students met all four indicators. Now it's about 21%. And so in terms of remediation, those numbers have ticked up. Now, we count remediation a little different, so it doesn't always stay the same. As Heather Morgan pointed out, we're moving to co-requisite remediation, so it's a little more hidden. It's a better method. We need to move there quickly. But the university's about 9 to 10% are in remediation. Community college, about 28%. And so we're going to take those students, we're going to meet them where they are. We're going to do our best to be sure that they graduate with a credential and get that education. So we know that our state faces some challenges to the talent pipeline. I would encourage you not to look too closely at the unemployment rate. Look at the labor participation rate, because if someone falls out of it for very long, falls out of seeking a job, they just become non-participating. And so that's something we need to look at. We're actually higher than a lot of states, but it still needs to be higher. Our demographics are evolving. We're going to be needing to serve more first-generation students. We're going to be needing to serve more Hispanic students, more Pell-eligible students, and more lower-income students in our state. And we know that. Now, my numbers, a little different from Matt Lindsay's, but we're about 2% lower than the independents in terms of Pells that we serve with the universities. We serve about 30%. They serve about 32% of their population are Pells. We might have a different data source. I have the community colleges higher at 33.7 and the tech colleges over 40%. So, but suffice it to say, those numbers are going to continue to increase and Kansas typically has not compared very well to other states in terms of state student financial aid. You did add need-based aid last year. We thank you for that, and we're going to reverse that trend. So in terms of the unified budget request, we're really looking to recruit more students. We're hearing from businesses we need more. We need more out-of-state students. We need more Kansans. We need just more. And that's going to be one of our strategies. We have several ways that we're going to do that, but that really means serving a student that wasn't served very well by higher education. And we have to change our systems to do that. We also need to recruit more out of state. As we realign, we've contracted with the National Institute of Student Success that has had a great success at Georgia State University, and we've developed playbooks to go through that. And then we want to retain those students through micro internships and placing them with Kansas business before they graduate. Once they graduate, it's too late. The recruitment is really hot and heavy. We also have a unified budget request that encourages some investment in some areas where we've had inflation, cybersecurity, facility renewal, and the demolition of obsolete facilities. We actually save about, for every dollar we spend there, we save about $5. So that we've invested $9.25 million in demolition. Now, those projects haven't been finished, obviously, because of the supply chain and that type of thing. But we're going to save $53 million in deferred maintenance. It's tremendous. Emporia State dropped their deferred maintenance by 20%, just by looking at a building that's no longer of use. It has high deferred maintenance. We've shrank a little bit in terms of student population, and we need to right-size our campus footprint. We're also evaluating our programs to see which programs make sense long-term, which ones need to be discontinued, and then where do we need to invest in growth programs. We also have several resources, KS Degree Stats. Every student that graduates, we list their salary, 1 year out, 5 years out, what it took for them in terms of expenses to pay for that education. It's an incredibly valuable resource, and now through our partnership with Kansas State Department of Education, we're hopeful that that's in every individual plan of study for students. We also have a transfer portal that we have on our website, and we do better than any other state serving the military. We have a close partnership with the military. We have over 40 military occupational specialties aligned. We give credit for those skills that they already received in the military, and we do it as an entire system. So that's been really positive. Our military partners would like to take it to other states. I'm hopeful that we continue to have a competitive advantage to attract those service members back into our higher ed system and ultimately into our economy. With that, I'd stand for questions.
Thank you. Representative Rajes.
Yeah, so this is just with our state universities. So our community colleges and technical colleges set their own tuition. Okay, so with our state universities, we have several that are moving toward that. I would say that probably the most aggressive has been Wichita State University, that has an I-35 corridor strategy, and really, and it's Highway 45, I think, that goes to Houston, but all the way down through that trade area on both sides, and then out to Denver, out to Kansas, that says those individuals can all be, those non-residents can have resident tuition. Here's where it gets difficult. If you're a institution like the University of Kansas and you already attract a number of out-of-state students, then it gets a little difficult, because once you flip the switch, everybody who's attending from Illinois, let's say, you'd have to give them in-state tuition as well. And can you make that work from a revenue model? But to your point, I anticipate more proposals that are going to be advantageous to out-of-state students to get them to Kansas. We have the capacity. There is an institution, not in the Big 12, but in a neighboring state, that is very aggressive in the Kansas City area. I'm not giving them any advertisement by mentioning their name, but they're very aggressive. We still recruit about twice as many students from out of state as leave the state. We're still doing well. I don't want to see anybody leave the state, or as few as possible. And if we do have some, I want to get more coming back in, to your point.
Yes, Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you were to provide in-state tuition rates to out-of-state students, wouldn't that just result in a significant tuition increase for the in-state students?
I would say no, and here's why. If you have capacity, it's a little bit like being on an airplane. You don't know what everybody's ticket cost, because if you have a classroom and let's say there's 50, you have a capacity of 50, and you only have 25. If you have 25 students paying any additional revenue, you can actually drive down the cost, because you'll actually have greater revenue coming. And so I do not believe, because we have capacity, I do not believe it would increase the cost. I actually think it would help our in-state rates.
Any other questions? I did have one question, Dr. Flanders. I read recently about the affiliation between Fort Hays State, and I should say the proposed affiliation between Fort Hays State, North Central Kansas Technical College, and Northwest Kansas Technical College. Can you tell the committee kind of the process moving forward?
Yeah, so the board, so just in terms of process, just to give some context to it, we've had several mergers, we've had several affiliations over time. Right now, if you're a community college and want to affiliate with another community college, or if you're a technical college and want to affiliate with a community college, you don't even need to come to the legislature. You've already granted that permissive ability for those institutions to affiliate. It's only if you want to affiliate with a university that you have to come through and get legislation. So just in terms of context, we have always seen positive results out of mergers and affiliations. So as an example, there was a technical school at Newton that merged with Hutchinson Community College a number of years ago. It's been a tremendous success. We've had Coffeyville Area Vocational Technical School actually merged with Coffeyville Community College, tremendous success. Call Area Technical School was mentioned earlier, merged or affiliated rather with Washburn University. It just elevated that institution. Enrollments grew. I would argue quality grew. And then the latest Wichita Area Technical College, which is now WSU Tech, affiliated with Wichita State University. It's been a tremendous success. So the board was interested in bringing forward a bill that would allow that to go on permissively, that you would approve throughout the state. We couldn't get agreement on that, so now we're just going to bring them individually. So if all the boards vote on that, and the local board at Goodland at Northwest Technical College, my understanding is already voted in the affirmative, North Central Kansas Technical College votes to do that, and then our board votes to do that, we would bring over legislation, unique legislation, specific legislation to those affiliations that would work through your session. And so that's how I will tell you, my home community of Goodland is incredibly excited to have that affiliation with Fort Hays State University. And I just hear that from anecdotally from many of my friends out there. So that the next step in the process, it'll go through those local boards, goes through the Board of Regents, and then it will come to the legislature.
Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When will the Board of Regents do that? I thought we'd talk about it next Wednesday. Is that correct? I wanted to make sure I knew the exact day. I do want to just make a comment, if I may. I think anytime universities, technical schools, community colleges, private schools, parochial schools, anytime they can come together and make an agreement that helps kids, helps a kid from Fort Hays who says, I can't do this. I really want to go into welding. They can seamlessly move into, go back home to Goodland or go back to Beloit, get that done and still get a degree without losing anything. When we do things for the kids and for Kansas, I think we win all the way around. So, and I know how excited both schools are, all three. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dr. Flanders.
Thank you for that support.
Any other questions? If not, I would just ask that the committee, there are ideas for future meetings, one of which is research, its critical role in higher education, as well as the economic development goals of our state. We have workforce challenges and higher education communities really stepping up to the plate in that sphere. There's others as well, but is there any that you would like to discuss here as future topics? Yeah, just can be kind of an informal discussion. Representative Rogers.
No, since we don't have necessarily a primarily this committee is based on budgets, but I'd like to see if maybe even the Regents presentation or sometime to talk about the impact that NIL, name, image, likeness, and the transfer portal has had on at least the bigger institutions. I mean, I guess it really if they have that data for any of these of our universities, because those are still students, as much as some of them not in this state, but other states make more than the college presidents do. But I think since some of us has a little heartburn, this train kind of left without us being able to even take a look at it. I would be curious if that's a possibility to see. I'm not necessarily looking if it's good or bad. I'm just curious of if it's just since our big three, and are there some of the state schools having some of those students involved? And looks like yesterday the NCAA kind of shut down the Wild West transfers, so we're not going to have a kid leave seemingly after every game play. But if that's a possibility, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, certainly we can add that to the list of possible meetings. Is Dr. Flanders still here? Oh. Well, I was about finished. We had a few more minutes, if you don't mind. So Governor Kelly issued an executive order as it relates to TikTok, the TikTok platform. And I know she, I guess, held harmless some other agencies, including the Board of Regents. So I didn't know if that was a topic of discussion for the board or not, but it was just something I had thought about of how these other agencies were going to address that issue.
Yeah, so that'll be a topic for the board. It's complex at the State University campus with the number of students and the number of students that respond through recruitment through that platform and use that platform. So we'll be looking at that. I expect for our agency here, we'll certainly we're not required to, but we would follow that executive order. I think it makes sense. I personally don't have a TikTok account, but we can I know it's shocking, but we can more easily do that. We'd have to look at each university and probably push that question back to each university so they could do a deep dive and see what that means for them.
Thank you. I just think it's really a critical issue, and especially the governor's action on it certainly heightened the awareness of the issue. And so it's something I would like to learn more about of how the universities are treating that as well. Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too am interested in the effect of the governor's decision about TikTok, and I think it's something that needs to be brought up in legislative modernization as well. But one of the things that I would really like, and I continue to harp on this, and I talked to members of the Board of Regents, I'm concerned about the remedial classes that as a whole, we're forced to do for kids that aren't ready from our K through 12 education system. And I think some pressure needs to be put on them to say, how are you taking care of these college prep or college bound students if they have to have remedial classes? So I'd like to hear more about what everyone's doing with extent to remediation for these kids. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Any other questions? If not, that concludes today's meeting of higher education budget. Thank you for all of the presenters that came before the committee, and look forward to working with you. Thank you.